Let's go ahead and take a look at another way of thinking about division, and that is through what we call the missing factor approach right here. And so we have this symbol. We learned first again that we have this symbol, A divided by B. A is called the dividend and B is called the divisor, right? And C is the quotient, important terms, or missing factor. And what we're looking at is this idea of missing factors. When students start to think about, if they learn 5 times 4 is 20, they also then know at some point 20 divided by 5 is 4, or 20 divided by 4 is 5, right? You have that interplay between multiplication and division, and that is what we call the missing factor approach. We have a definition for that, right? If A and B are whole numbers and you have A divided by B equals C, if and only if, right? That division is true if and only if A is equal to B times C. And so that's kind of something we use in algebra also to solve equations, but it's called the missing factor approach. And so 24 divided by 8 equals 3 because 8 times 3 equals 24. And so you can see these other missing factors, but it's an important acknowledgement to realize that you can solve division problems with multiplication, right? Working backwards. We also learned the division property of 0. 0 divided by anything is 0. And so keep that in mind here. Like we have here, 0 divided by 7 is 0. Now, a lot of students want to know what happens when we divide by 0. And so we have some cases here to look at in terms of dividing by 0. And so you want to read those, right? And so let's say in this case that A divided by 0 actually is some answer, right? And we say a C. What that then means is if this is true here, right? If this is true, A divided by 0 equals C, some number, then A has to equal to 0 times C, right? And in that case, A would be equal to 0, right? But since we know A cannot be equal to 0, right? Therefore, A divided by 0 is undefined. In case 2, think of a situation. If 0 divided by 0 equals C, then we know 0 is equal to 0 times C, which then means to make that equation true, C is any value. So there is no unique C. It works for any number. Thus, division by 0 is said to be indeterminate or undefined. And so those two cases summarize that, that argument of why we can't divide by 0. We'll end this one on this section of this video on the division algorithm. And so looking at the division algorithm here, if A and B are whole numbers, then we know there exist other numbers such that A is equal to B times Q plus R. And in this case, B is your divisor, Q is your quotient, plus R the remainder. That's what those are going to stand for, as you see the notation for that. But every number can be written in this form. It's an interesting finding. And so find the quotient and remainder for these problems. 57 divided by 9. And so what we're looking at on that is using that division algorithm to think about. 9 times 6 is 54, so 57 is 9 times 6 plus 3. And so now you know the quotient is 6, the divisor was 9, and the remainder is 3. And so you could also see that in this figure here, as we're using repeated addition, 9 gets added 6 times, and after that there's still a remainder of 3. And so that's where we leave off on that. 44 divided by 13, again we have a solution down here about that. And then 96 divided by 8, we have the same idea there. 8 times what equals 96? 8 times 12, right? 13 times what is 44? 13 times 3 is 39, and then we have a leftover of 5. So you can see that notation there.